Chief Minister, thank you for the interview here. I'm here predominantly as an anti-child abuse campaigner and, of course, a voter. First of all, when did you decide you were going to seek re-election, both as Chief Minister and Senator? And just as importantly, why did you decide?
Well, I'd said that I would be considering after Christmas, and I spent Christmas thinking about it. I think it's fair to say there are two big issues that have driven my decision. One is the Brexit uncertainty. The second is the implications of the historic child abuse inquiry and the need to deliver on those recommendations.
Well, because if you want to hear my theory, is I thought, do you know what? You've just realised that you're up against the Jersey way. I thought you were not going to stand, that you were, should I say, a beaten man. I thought you'd just seen what you were up against and thought, do you know what? I don't need this stuff anymore. So how wrong was I? Did those thoughts ever come into your head?
I don't think I've ever seen it in those terms. I see it more in the effect it has on my family. My children are now 8 and 6, so they're just getting a knowledge of what their father does, although they still think every father does a job similar to their own father. So it's that concern me most. Would they themselves get grief? I don't mind getting grief. That's what the job is. You make a decision, people disagree with you, but I don't want it for my family. But having discussed it and thought about it, having spent the last 10 months saying, no, I want to deliver on the recommendations of the inquiry, I thought, I'm going to put myself back to the public. Do they want to see change? Do they actually want us to move on to a better way? And that's what this election is going to be all about.
Well, I've got questions along those lines. You'll be pleased to hear then, if that's the case. So here we are. Who, as in voters, do you hope to be appealing to? You're bringing around some pretty substantial, significant reforms, both to the public sector and the states. Won't this alienate the traditionalists, the traditionalist vote, which is the biggest vote out there, really?
I hope it doesn't. I hope that Islanders see that we've got a really strong economy. We've got a growing number of people in employment. We've got reducing levels of unemployment, and that actually, for a lot of people, Jersey is an absolutely fantastic place to live. So I'm not going to stop doing all of that. I'm going to carry on being a person that wants to see a strong economy, wants to see a strong financial services sector. I'm not suddenly veering off to a different political persuasion, but what I do want to do at the same time is make sure that government, the states, never ever lets children down in the way that we did before. So in that bit, we absolutely have to reform, and I don't think that they're incompatible. I think we can have a strong economy with hope for Islanders, but we can also address these issues that have affected us for a long time. And I think, you know what, I think Islanders are fed up that government takes so long to make decisions. I think they're fed up with a government that looks as though it's more concerned with itself than it is about them.
Okay, well, you've been a staunch supporter of the Jersey Independent Care Inquiry, as I said, and the implementation of its recommendations. Has this hurt you politically among your own ranks, and do you believe it could hurt you at the polls? Again, I have the traditional voter in mind. So has it hurt you in your own ranks, and will it hurt you at the polls by supporting this care inquiry and its recommendations?
We've already seen that for some people they are putting their heads above the parapet and saying that I've got the care inquiry wrong, that I shouldn't have committed to the recommendations. But they're not actually saying that the changes that I'm proposing, that I've brought the new chief executive in to deliver in the service, they're not saying those are wrong. And so I think actually there can be an alignment to delivering change that the care inquiry says we need to deliver, and change in government. And I think that all islanders can get behind it. I don't think it needs to be divisive. I'm a person that believes in our institutions, but they have to reform.
Okay, this is a lot more of a two-part question here. There's little doubt that the negative connotations of the Jersey Way is alive and well in the community. We see this in letters in the JEP, and people believe that the Committee of Inquiry was an expensive waste of time and money. Do you think you've done enough to inform the public of the horrendous atrocities and abuse that took place in state-run care homes for decades? In our last interview, you said that every States member and member of the public should read the Care Inquiry's report in order to get a real understanding of the atrocities that occurred. Do you know how many States members have actually read the report? You can't tell me how many members of the public have.
I don't. I mean, I think if you asked them, they'd all say they had. They know in conscience whether that's the case or not. The new chief executive I recruited on the back of the Care Inquiry. And I can tell you something shocking now. Only last week, it was either last week or the week before, was the first time that at CMD, that's the Corporate Management Board, they had their first proper discussion about the Care Inquiry and what it meant for this organisation, and how children should be at the heart of everything that they do, and that how they all have a responsibility in this idea of corporate parent.
All senior CEOs, if you like. And so it was a positive. I mean, was everybody on board?
As far as the report back to me was that it was a positive discussion, and there was a recognition that it's a whole organisation issue.
Is there anything that you can do to bring to attention to the public? And you can't force people to read the report, but from what I see in the local media and the rest of it, people still don't understand what exactly went on up at Hope Lagara, and they want to talk about money. They want to talk about how much the panel spent coming over here and how much they spent on a prawn cocktail. We've seen that with Operation Rectangle. They did that to Lenny Harper. Let's all talk about money, and nobody wants to talk about the abuse. Is there anything you can do to bring this to people's attention? Let's not talk about money, let's talk about the real issue here, and it's the abuse of children and destroying of lives. Is there anything you can do to...
I will keep saying that even though it was expensive, it was money we had to spend. And I stand by the independence of the inquiry. That inquiry had to look wherever they wanted to look. I mean, we get criticism that they made recommendations that were outside of their remit. That's what an independent inquiry does. They say, okay, well, all these people have come and stood before us. It might not be in the remit, but we should comment on it. It's right that the public understand what people feel who suffered abuse. I know it's hard. I know it's really hard for islanders to hear those stories and to come to terms with them. And I've already heard fellow politicians saying, oh, it's outrageous, you're using the Care Inquiry to deliver this change and that change. That's because that's what the Care Inquiry says we should do. I think lots of people knew that government structure wasn't serving islanders well. But if you look in that Care Inquiry, it's not just about structure and processes. The way that we've structured government, the way that we've been operating, has affected real people's lives, and the most vulnerable people in our community, it's affected their lives. And so we've got to change it. And we've got to not say, oh, I agree in principle with change, but I'm just not going to vote for it when it happens. It's not an option anymore.
It'll be a completely different house after the next election, so I'm sure we'll see what comes on there. So, okay, the rumour is that Senator Philip Balash is going to contest the leadership role as Chief Minister, either openly or by proxy. Have you heard that rumour?
We don't know yet what Senator Balash is going to do, nor have we heard what all other ministers are going to do. We know that Senator Farnham has said that he's going to have a go at the job of Chief Minister.
Is he a threat?
I will state what I think my strengths are and my vision for the future, and he will state his. What I do think is that this time it's really important to have a contest for Chief Minister.
Because this will be your third, and you'll be the longest serving. You already are the longest serving Chief Minister, so this will be your third one of office. Well, if you're,
it's a big if.
It's a big if. So, being a staunch critic of the Care Inquiry, Senator Philip Balash, what kind of effect do you think it would have on the implementations of the Care Inquiry's recommendations should Senator Balash or a proxy be elected as Chief Minister?
Well, all I can speak for is myself. I've been criticised for committing to the recommendations. I take that on the nose, as it were. I've always been somebody that's tried to put Jersey first. People will challenge me in this election and say, Chief Minister, you're responsible for all the failings of government. Why didn't you do it earlier? I mean, a number of people are saying to me, critics are saying, why didn't you do this earlier? Well, because I didn't really fully understand, and I don't think anybody did, until all of the evidence was brought together in the Care Inquiry, just what effect the structure of government and the way we operated government was having. So that's a perfectly legitimate complaint to make about my term in office. But what I would say is, look at what I've done since the Care Inquiry was published, and I'm going to carry on doing that. Other people who want to stand for Chief Minister, they will have their own manifestos, they will have their own view. I believe I've got a strong track record now over the last 10 months of delivering on those recommendations, and it will be for Islanders ultimately to decide, and then a new Assembly, if I'm fortunate to be in that number, to decide what they want.
Okay, so why, myself as an anti-child abuse campaigner and supporter of reform in the States, should I vote for you at the next coming election?
Well, I would say if you want to be absolutely certain that you're going to see reform, if you want to be certain that you're going to have somebody in the top job that wants to change the system and wants to put children first, look at their track record. Vote for me on my track record in the last 10 months.
Okay then, so why should a traditionalist and a supporter of the status quo vote for you?
I don't think traditionalist is necessarily a supporter of the status quo. I think there's plenty of traditionalists out there that feel that government's not been listening to them, who are find the Care Inquiry difficult, and they don't want me to be banging on about it, but they do want me to be making those changes. And I'd also say, look at the economy, look at the number of people in work, look at how we've got through the economic downturn, look at how we're navigating Brexit. Don't put your economic future at risk. I'm offering you a continued strong future in Jersey, whilst at the same time bringing change and delivering government in a better way.
Okay, so finally, I want to thank you for engaging with social media, or the unaccredited media, as the accredited media like to call us. You've granted me a number of interviews in the past, so I can't accuse you of just electioneering this time. Do you think social media has much influence with the voting public?
Well, I think it does. I mean, if one talks to the what we might call accredited media, although I know you don't like that term, they are looking more and more to social media, to trends in social media to deliver their stories. So even though it might feel as though it's slightly indirect, mainstream media are now picking up their stories from social media. So I think we're going to see it more and more have an effect in this election. And of course I'm an electioneering. I said I was standing for election. That's what we do.